In this episode, I want to talk about the instrumental case. So I'll cover the prepositions used with the instrumental case in another video because the instrumental case is a pretty broadly used case, so just to save time. So first let's look at the changes that our nouns are going to undergo when they're in the instrumental case. Pretty straightforward. Masculine and neuter nouns are going to end in om, yim, or yom, depending on whether they end in a hard sound or a soft sound, or i karatki. And then our feminine nouns are going to end in oi, ye, yoi, or if they end in a soft sign, they're going to keep that soft sign and add a u. So this is in the singular. And everybody, regardless of gender, is going to end in ami or yami, just depending on whether it ends with a soft or hard sound. So our adjectives and our pronouns are pretty much as we would expect them to be. You don't have to worry about animate or inanimate or anything like that. Just pay attention to your soft endings. Okay, so let's talk about the uses of the instrumental case. So we use the instrumental case when we're talking about instruments, right? When we're answering the question, Чем, with what was something done? So, Чем вы пишете? What do you write with? We would answer, Я пишу карандашом. Я пишу карандашом, right? I write with a pencil. So, we don't need any preposition. Just by putting the noun into the instrumental case, we're indicating that it's the instrument that's being used to do something. So here we've got a knife, right? So you could say somebody's cutting something. Отец режет хлеб ножом, right? With a knife. So the father uses a knife to cut the bread. Or суп можно есть ложкой, with a spoon. So all of these instrumental endings are just indicating that the noun is the instrument being used to do something. We also use the instrumental case to denote the manner in which something is done, right? So it's kind of like what we were just doing with instruments, but this time, for example, она говорит тихим голосом, or шепотом. So she speaks in a soft voice or in a whisper. So in English we would say with a soft voice maybe, or with a whisper, something was said. So when you hear the word with in English, you should think instrumental case. Not always going to be the case, but it's often. So we could also describe the manner in which somebody walked, right? On шел быстрым шагом. So like with quick steps. So he walked quickly. So the instrumental is indicating the mean or the manner in which something is done. We also use it just flat out when we're saying with. So, for example, Ivan болеет гриппом. So Ivan is sick with the flu. So it just means with, in the same way that it meant with when we were talking about cutting the bread with a knife. We use the instrumental when we're talking about, sometimes when we're indicating what time something occurred, and you'll remember this from your book. Утром, днем, вечером, ночью, зимой, летом, весной, осенью. So all of the seasons, right? If you're saying what time of year you do something, or what the weather is like at that time of year, you're going to put the time of year into the instrumental case. So let's look at some examples. So here we've got a bright sunny day. These people over here sunbathing. Солнечным днем мы загораем на пляже. Right? So on the sunny day, we tan at the beach or lay out at the beach. Жарким летом мы купаемся. So in the heat of the summer, right? Hot summer, where we go swimming, or we swim. So we've got днем, летом, and then the adjectives that describe them also are in the accusative or instrumental case. Прохладным вечером мы гуляем в парке. Right, so our time and the adjective describing that time in the instrumental. So we also use the instrumental when we mean by someone in a passive sentence. So what is a passive sentence? Well, in English, we are encouraged to write in the active voice, which would be, for example, so the teacher corrected the notebooks. So our subject is doing something to a direct object. It's a very tight sentence, not a lot of extraneous words. And that's encouraged in English. The passive would be the notebooks were corrected by the teacher. So you can see it's a lot longer of a sentence. And it's a little less direct, a little less active, right? So in Russian, it's the opposite. The active voice is not as impressive or as high of a style as the passive voice. So you'll definitely come across a lot of passive voice when you're reading. It's a higher style. So this sentence in Russian would be Тетради были проверены учителем. So the notebooks were corrected by the teacher. So here's our instrumental to say by someone, in this case the teacher, by the teacher. So we also use the instrumental when we're saying by something in impersonal sentences. So in this case, we see a tree getting struck by lightning. Дерево ударило молнией. So the tree was struck by lightning, and it's impersonal. Okay, so then there are certain verbs that require the instrumental. 3 of them that you probably are familiar with, more or less, are verbs to say to be. So быть, you definitely know, and that's to be. And you don't really have it in the present tense. It's mostly past or future. And oftentimes you put what someone was or what someone will be or what was or what will be into the instrumental case. So, for example, on будет профессором, on был секретарем института. So he will be a professor, or he was the secretary of the institute. It indicates a sort of temporary state. If I were to say when I was young, I would say когда я была маленькой, right? I put that into the instrumental because I'm no longer young, and so it's a state that's, I would never say when I was a girl because I'm still a girl, so that would stay in the nominative case. So, являться, this is a more bookish or formal way to say to be, but it means basically the same thing. And you're not going to come across it as much in spoken Russian, but you will see it written. And let's look at an example. Россия является родиной Pushkina. So, and this just means Russia is the birthplace of Pushkin. So a long word to just say is. And because we don't use the verb to be very often in the present tense, you don't really come across it, this is a way to have that verb to be in a present construction. And then finally, становится is to become something. So an example would be сын становится хорошим музыкантом. So the son is becoming a good musician. So we put what he's becoming in the instrumental, what he's turning into. And you could also say я хочу стать профессором. I'd like to become a professor. So, okay, then some more verbs are the two to work or as to serve. So whatever you're working as or serving as is going to be in the instrumental. Катя работала врачом. So Katya worked as a doctor. Or Петр служил солдатом. So Peter served as a soldier. So both of those verbs, if you're saying, if you mean to work as or to serve as, you're going to use the instrumental. Then there are 3 verbs that use the instrumental when you're indicating interest or occupation with something. So увлекаться, to be fascinated with something, интересоваться, to be interested in something, or заниматься, to be engaged in or to study something. And whatever it is that you're interested in or occupied by is going to be in the instrumental. So let's look at some examples. Sasha увлекается футболом. Он занимается футболом зимой, летом, осенью и весной. So we've got two of those verbs, увлекаться and заниматься, and you'll see that they both require the instrumental. And then we used these guys, if you remember, in the instrumental to indicate a time when something's happening. And another example, в школе Ирина занималась гимнастикой и даже была чемпионкой города. Okay, so here we've got a couple. Заниматься plus the instrumental. Gymnastics is in the instrumental. And была, so she was temporarily, or the temporary state, the champion of the town, or the town champ. So there are more verbs that you'll come across, but when you do, just memorize them together with the instrumental case. But these are kind of the most useful, or probably the ones that you've already come across. Enjoy the instrumental case.